Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello, I'm Rory, and with me, as always, is Ken. How you doing, Ken?
Exceptionally well, Rory. Delighted to be here. You have tuned in to episode 135 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. We've got three fantastic topics to discuss today, starting off with preparing for client breaks. At the time of this recording, it is very pertinent because we're kind of running up to a seasonal break, but we're going to be covering different kinds of breaks as well. How do we prepare our clients for those? Then our second topic is we're going to be checking in with our good friends at CPCAB. And Rory, you spoke to Kelly Budd and you spoke about that very first ever client hour.
Yes, and this is something that comes up in our Facebook page all the time. And if you don't know where our Facebook page is, well, here we go. If you just type in Counselling Tutor into Facebook, you'll find our page, click on it. It's a closed group, knock on the door. Of course, we're going to let you in. And you'll be with thousands of other like-minded students. There's tutors in there. They're qualified practitioners. And they're all talking about the world of counselling and psychotherapy. So knock on that door and come on in. And this comes up quite a lot, this topic quite a lot, as people post and say on the Facebook page, my first client hour, I'm not sure, I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with it. Or, yes, my first client hour done. Either way, it is a seminal it's a seminal event in the life of a student practitioner, that first client hour. And Kelly Budd is going to be talking about how we make the best use of that.
Looking forward to that one. And then we end episode 135 with our third topic, which is planning for your continuing professional development, your CPD. What can you put in place? So let's start preparing for those client breaks, Rory.
Yes, I mean, I think that with holiday season upon us, I think it's useful to consider how do we plan for client breaks, and the things that we really need to keep in the forefront of our mind here is what are the timescales? So, when are you going to take a break? Considering each client as an individual and thinking about, do you need to map any support? Some clients will be okay with the break. Others may need, may need some other form of support. And in certain cases, may need a referral. So let's just have a look at each one of those topics. In terms of timescales, 1 week for every month you work with the client is pretty much a good rule of thumb to set you speaking with the clients about a break. And you should speak with breaks, I think, Ken, well in advance of them.
Yeah, I think that's a good practice, that if you know that you're going to be taking a break, then your client should be the next person to know. You give them as much distance as you can. If as soon as you've planned that holiday, it's worth, or that break that you're taking, it's worth bringing that up in your therapy session. And it doesn't have to be things like seasonal breaks like Christmas. It can be if you're just going away mid-year or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're having to go away on a training course, or if you're going to have to go into hospital or something like that, there are lots of reasons why we take client breaks. So making sure the client knows well in advance. I think if you've got a client who is quite wobbly, and you tell them a week before you go away, I don't think you're being really in service of that client, because they may get very stressed. What am I going to do? Who am I going to see? Which brings really on to the next thing, which is mapping support. And one of the things I was taught when I was a student was, when we came to breaks, helping the client map their own support system. It should be with autonomy. We shouldn't be saying to clients, well, he could go there, he could do this, or he could do that. They need to self-evaluate what support they need. And sometimes just saying to the client, I'm going to be away for 2 weeks. How does that feel for you? And if you say, well, I'm not sure, I say, okay, so let's have a think. What kind of support systems have you got in place? And mapping support is a very interesting exercise, because people probably have more support than they know that they have. So when they write it down or talk about it, they realize what a support system they've got.
Yeah, and it's a great way of reminding them as well. So if you've briefed that break at some distance, maybe some weeks or months before, as you're getting closer to that break, you're reminding that client, and again, as you said, Rory, but mapping out that support, discussing what they will be doing during that break, how they will remain safe, what they might do if they have an emergency. So you may be sharing a telephone number with them for an emergency service like the Samaritans or something like that if times get really, really tough for them. And you're basically taking care that they have, I guess, some arms around them when you are unable to be there for them. And Rory, one of the things that we've discussed in other podcasts, and I know it's a completely different topic, but there is also a thing called a transitional object, Rory.
Yes, it is, and I've used transitional objects a lot. I wear a little bracelet, and occasionally, and clients have said, "I'm not sure, I'm really wobbly." I'll say, "Well, is there anything that I could offer you? I have a little bracelet here. You could take that, and you could use that just to think of what we do here," and that kind of works very well. I mean, there's a caveat to that. Don't offer people the keys to your house or your car, or your expensive wristwatch, because they may not come back. But a transitional object is, it is a proven way of having clients having something tangible of the relationship. It could be a ring, it could be something in the therapy room, a candle or a book. There's lots of different transitional objects, and they can be really, really useful. And also, with clients who may be in real difficulty, you may need to think about a referral. Would the client need to see another therapist in the time you're away? And that's something you're going to have to negotiate with the client. I think if you're a student, that's something you have to speak with your supervisor and maybe your practice manager if you've got someone who's really struggling. And it's not unusual to make a referral maybe to another therapist who can see them in the interim, or a organisation that can offer some form of support. You talked in the UK about the Samaritans. They do great work. There's lots of others. There's women's support lines. There's all sorts of different. Big White Wall is another one. Headspace. There's huge amounts of online support now for people who may be struggling. But you need to have that in place before you kind of decide to go on holiday. This needs all to be planned. It should be a planned break, really.
Yeah. And I guess there's a great luxury in having that planned break. And we have done other podcasts where we speak about unplanned breaks, where suddenly you may become ill or you're unable to be there, or your car breaks down, you're not able to get to your practice, and what you might put in place. And I guess it's very different. We're speaking very much now about planning and preparing your client for those breaks. And we spoke about that transitional objects, Rory, and I know in person-centered therapy, homework is not a thing that is given. So maybe in cognitive behavioral therapy, you may send the client away with stuff that they need to do, practice, write down, diarize, whereas in person-centered therapy, that's not something that would be done. However, if there is a break and you speak to the client, they say, "Oh, I'm going to be lost. I don't know what I'm going to be doing this time next week when we normally meet." You can suggest, I guess, a transitional exercise, that they maybe read a book, or that they maybe diarize or write down how they are or what they'd like to bring to the next sessions, that they feel some kind of a connection and an involvement in their journey.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Ken, that the third one, do we need to consider referral, shouldn't be something that student therapists have to negotiate, because student therapists shouldn't be seeing clients with this intensity. Clients who are incredibly fragile, who may be in danger if the therapist doesn't turn up. But in good practice, we'd look at making sure the timescales were appropriate, looking at mapping support, and if somebody was really having difficulty, really, really wobbly, maybe looking to make a referral. But yes, it's essential, and it's really good practice.
Nice one. Nice topic. So episode 135, moving on to our second topic, which is our check-in with CPCAB. Rory, you spoke to Kelly Budd about that first counselling hour. I remember mine. I was full of apprehension, wondering who will this client be? And I guess the most challenging time for me was the 10 minutes when I was sat in the room waiting, and there was this anticipation. There was 10 minutes to go. It was probably the longest 10 minutes of my life, Rory.
Oh, absolutely, Ken. I can remember my first client hour, and I worked in Rochdale at the time in a camera shop driving back. And quite frankly, it's a wonder I actually made it to my practice. I was just so preoccupied with what was going on, and I was going to be good enough, and all those kind of self-doubt things. And actually, it didn't go too well, if I'm honest. It wasn't the greatest experience that I've had, but it was a fantastic learning opportunity. And it's one that I return to again and again 16 years after qualifying. But yes, the first client hour. And what Kelly really does is she gives us some really good observations on how to make the most of it, how to celebrate it, and maybe how to get a bit of a debrief with somebody to kind of allow that kind of energy to be kind of transported away from you, to allow you to kind of bring yourself back down to earth. It's really good.
Let's check in with Kelly Budd with CPCAB.
Check in with CPCAB.
Hello, and we welcome back Kelly Budd, who's going to be talking about something really important: the first placement hour. Kelly.
Hi, Rory. I think it's something that's a really important thing to recognise and to note. It's something I see so much on the Counselling Tutor Facebook page, students saying, I'm about to see my first client. And it's a momentous occasion. So I kind of wanted to do a little bit of talking around what that can feel like for people and maybe how they can prepare themselves well for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to be underestimated. It is the first hour of the rest of your professional life, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's if you are going to be a counsellor, this is the first day it really becomes real. And I think the weight of that is sometimes quite a lot. I think people feel a real mix of emotions. It can be very, very exciting. You know that you're going to be a real counsellor for the first time, sat in a real room with somebody. But at the same time, you realise you're going to be a real counsellor for the first time. You're going to be sat in a room with somebody. So the kind of the emotions that can come with that, the nerves, the anxiety, I think it's really important to kind of consider how that might impact on you.
Absolutely.
I think by that point, you know, if you're in the placement, your course provider has said that they think that you're ready. Your tutor signed you off probably. Your placement's probably inducted you by this point, talked through what you're capable of and decided that they're ready to let you have one of their clients. So it's kind of, you know that you're going to go into that room, you're going to meet somebody, and that's going to be the start of it. I think it's amazing.
It is, and I think you made a really important point. The fact your tutor signed you off, that the agency has said, "Yeah, we've got a client for you." That is about confidence in you as a student practitioner, isn't it? Your tutor's confident, and your placement is confident in you, and that's probably something to carry in when the nerves kick in.
Yeah, I think it's important, but I hear a lot of students, and I remember myself thinking, okay, so they've said I'm ready, and then I find myself thinking, am I really ready? Am I ready to do this? And I remember a real feeling of almost being a bit of an imposter. And even kind of having the centre say, yes, you're ready, my tutor saying, yep, I've seen you practice. I still remember this little voice saying, maybe I'm just presenting really well, but actually inside, maybe I'm not actually ready. Maybe they're not seeing that I'm going to be dreadful at this. I'm kind of having that real self-doubt at the last moment of what happens if I go in there and I'm actually bad at this. I could say something really wrong. I could hurt this client in some way. And all of that stuff kind of comes up for us. And it's really important to find a way of dealing with that so that you don't walk into the room and that's the first thing that's kind of in your mind is, oh dear, I think I'm going to be dreadful at this.
Absolutely. So, when the nerves kick in, what kind of thoughts may go through someone's head?
I think some people will wonder kind of what will happen if I do or say something wrong. Will I remember my theory when I'm in there? And then also, should I remember my theory, or will my theory get in the way of me being with my client? Will it be like it is in class, or will this client be really quiet and not talk, or will they be really take over the session? How will I manage what this might be like in the real world? There's a lot that can go on for somebody internally.
Absolutely. So, is it possible to prepare yourself to get past these, these nerves? And well, let's say a little bit about being nervous. Good or a bad thing?
I think nerves are a good thing. I think if you're not nervous going in, you possibly don't care about it enough as you should do. I think nerves are really important. They motivate us to try to do our best. And I always used to get my students on my level 4 saying, but I'm not sure if I'm ready. I don't feel 100% confident yet. And I say, well, of course you're not going to feel 100% confident yet. You haven't done it yet. If you wait until the day when you know that you're 100% good at being a counsellor, you're probably going to be waiting a very long time. You just need to be ready enough to be safe to go in there and manage what's going on for you and kind of prepare yourself for that so that you can be there for the client.
Absolutely. And if you transpose confidence into other areas of work, I guess if you're going on your holidays and the pilot, would you want a 100% confident pilot or a 99% confident pilot? Someone who's checking everything and making sure that what's on the instrument panel is actually happening. I know which one I'd want.
Yeah, you want somebody with a little bit of conscious competence at the very least, somebody who's thinking, am I doing this right? Yes, I am, and can at least kind of do that checking process for themselves.
So what kind of preparations could someone put into place to negate or to reduce these feelings of nervousness?
I think it's very much dependent on the individual. It's kind of understanding what it is that's going on for you. So it might be that you're worried that you're going to be very anxious and that anxiety might prevent you from connecting with the client. In which case, it's working maybe with your tutor, with some peers, looking at ways of calming yourself down to a place where you're okay, breathing techniques, grounding. Or it might be wondering if you're the only person feeling that way. So talk to your peers, talk to people that have been there, hear about their experiences. How did they overcome that first session? Or it might just be practical stuff of thinking, how do I feel going into that room? Do I feel I know what I'm doing with this client enough? So it might be reading their notes, or they've probably been assessed by somebody in the agency. So there might be a kind of précis of what they're coming to talk about. And you can kind of prepare yourself for what sort of things you might be covering in that session by looking through the client notes. So I think there's a lot of stuff people can do. And think about skill sessions. You've probably done hundreds of them by this point. You've probably done quite a lot of them very, very well. So kind of recalling when you knew you were good and take that feeling in with you instead of the kind of imposter, oh, good Lord, I'm actually going to have to do this.
Yes. And it's very possible, isn't it, that the counsellor may be the client may be more nervous than the counsellor.
Absolutely. I think most clients coming in for therapy are going to be quite worried about what's going to happen to them. That's often the perspective. So remember that they are the person that's the most important in the room. They're probably going to be more nervous than you. I hear myself saying that and think it's what my partner says to me about a spider when it runs across the room with the floor of the bathroom. They say it's more scared than you are. And I think that's kind of true. It's okay. You're going to be anxious, but it really is about the client. Stay with them. I still remember my first client that I saw in placement. I can picture her face.
Yes.
She was definitely a lot more terrified than I was, and it went okay.
Yes.
It was. I just looked at her and thought, actually, you need me to be here for you more than I need to be up in my own head worrying about my performance right now.
Absolutely. So we get to the end of the first hour. We've broken the duck, as they say in cricketing parlance. What would you do? What do you suggest someone does after the session?
I think it's important to, like I say, note to yourself that it's quite a moment in your career. Plan something for the end of it. Make sure that you don't just do the hour and then just go back into kind of or walk out of your agency and not talk to anybody. Maybe plan to debrief with your agency manager or another counsellor, your supervisor, talk through how you felt it went. Make sure that you really kind of offload that. And then my recommendation, do some self-reflection, maybe journal about it. Your tutors will love it if you write in your learning review about how you felt in that session, what you learned. And I recommend celebrate. Go home. A bit of self-care never goes amiss. A nice hot bath or an evening meal out, or get yourself a bar of chocolate, something that you like to say, yes, that was an achievement. Well done, me.
Absolutely. And I think there is something there, isn't it, about celebrating a very important milestone in counsellor training. I know when I used to train counsellors, they make, they'd sit in a circle and they'd come and they'd share, it was their first client, and I would lean forward and I would point and I would say, "You're a counsellor now." Yeah. And all the other students would give them a round of applause to reinforce that kind of notion that even though they are a student, they are in fact a counsellor to their client. They are a counsellor.
Yeah, you will never have that first hour again. So really do note it for yourself. That is the moment at which you are a real counsellor. And yeah, I think it's really important to feel the fear and do it anyway, and then reflect on it afterwards, gain something from it, and pat yourself on the back a little bit. You got through it. Yeah.
It's a great day. It's a great thing that people are doing, helping others. It should be a celebration. So if you listen to this and you're in the process of doing your first hour, or maybe you should complete your first hour, congratulations to you, and thank you for making a difference in the world. As Gandhi famously said, "Be the change you want the world to be." I think I paraphrased him reasonably correctly, and you are making a change in someone's life, and you're doing that as part of your training. It's fantastic. So, as always, Kelly, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rory, and good luck to you all.
Check-in with CPCAB is proudly sponsored by CPCAB, the only awarding body run by counsellors for counsellors. To learn more about CPCAB qualifications and to get more detailed information on today's podcast topic, visit cpcab.co.uk.
Well, I tell you, Ken, I wish I'd had that advice when I did my first client hour. That's all I can say. If that's absolutely sage advice. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who listen to that who'll say, that's really, really useful.
Indeed it is. And we have a great resource that we're going to put in today's show notes, which is just a link to an article that we have on our website, which is Counselling Tutor. And it's on that first client hour again, preparing, I guess, for that. So just some further information. And Rory, I also just want to go back to our first topic on preparing for client breaks. I know that you made a super duper handout, a downloadable sheet on kind of some things we might consider when preparing for client breaks. And that also, you can claim that free of charge. You just get that from our website, and then you go to counsellingtutor.com, click on the podcast tab. It's going to show you all of our back catalogue of podcasts. You want to go to episode 135. That's where you're going to find the links to today's episode and Rory's super duper handout on preparing clients for breaks. And now we kind of move on to our next topic, which is, I guess, poignant for this time of year as we make this. We're running up to the festive period in the UK, Christmas. There's a lot of downtime. Agencies close down. Some clients will disengage. That's why we covered the preparing for breaks. You might be taking a step out of practice. But it's also a time where we kind of look to what the new year might hold, and CPD, our continuing professional development, Rory. So the next topic is planning for your CPD.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, first of all, we need to acknowledge the necessity for continual professional development. Professional people, doesn't matter if you're a therapist or doing any other form of work, CPD is absolutely essential to keep you, in the forefront of how the industry or the profession is moving, and also to make sure that any gaps that you have where clients come in and you think, I really don't know how to deal with this, are filled. And I think the best way of identifying CPD is listen to your clients. Your clients will guide you into what you need to know. I did recently, within the last year, a certificate in trauma-informed practice. And that was just so useful because my clients at the time were guiding me. I had a lot of people coming with post-traumatic stress, a lot of people coming in with trauma-based presentations, and just doing that course allowed me to fill the gaps of the knowledge that I didn't have and be able to offer them a better service. And there's lots of ways of gaining CPD. Traditionally, people have traveled a long way to training providers, sat in a room, maybe taking 2 or 3 days up, which is fine. Had a tutor, rather like a taught input, and done their CPD that way. And there is a place for taught input with a tutor in a group and feedback. But also there's different ways of getting CPD. And in fact, a lot of people now are gaining CPD online. They go into a quality provider and they can look and spend some time online gaining their CPD.
Yeah, and kind of comes at a good time as well. We're just weeks away from launching with Counselling Tutor. We've launched and provided support for students called the Counselling Study Resource for many years now, and that's been greatly successful. But students come to the end of their journey and they kind of say, I now need to be looking at my CPD. So we are launching our CPD provision for qualified therapists, and that will be launching January 2020. So lots to look forward to there. And for me, CPD is more than just presentations. It's great that you'll be in your practice, and a presentation will come up, and it'll be maybe a presentation that interests you. You want to do some learning, some continuing professional development. You'll seek out to understand that better, and then you're better able to be there with your clients, better able to service your clients. But it's not just presentations. Our skills that we use in every session, how often are they honed? How often are they polished up? How often do we dive a little deeper into our skills? What about things like note taking? When last did you look at your note taking practice? Has it changed? Because there's been changes in legislation. If you're still doing the same note taking process as you were doing maybe 5 years ago, and the law has changed, does that meet the requirements of the law? So CPD is more than just the presentation. It's looking at our whole practice in its entirety. Deliberate practice is looking for kind of areas of our practice where we feel that there might be a weakness, and that may be ourself looking there, or an area for improvement, and that may be our supervisor helping with us with that, and kind of looking to learn and develop skills in those areas. And that is going to be a focus in our new CPD provision section of Counselling Tutor. We're going to be looking at the whole of practice, not just individual presentations, including you as a practitioner, self-development. Also, it's continuing professional development, is looking at yourself throughout the whole process.
Absolutely. And part of that is, as you rightly say, it's looking at all aspects of your practice, deliberate practice. Your skills, your knowledge of legal framework, things like general data protection regulations, if you're practicing within Europe. Also, the updates of the law. We've moved very quickly into gender diversity, and looking at how to properly address people who may have changed their gender. So there's lots really to be learned, and also it's just never ever stops. But what a great addition. We started off by talking about preparing clients for breaks, which is quite apt really, because we're going into the Christmas break, or the winter break for those who perhaps don't celebrate Christmas. Our check-in with CPCAB, Kelly talked about the excitement and the trepidation of the first client hour. Finally, we ended with planning your CPD, planning your continual professional development. So as always, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take care.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.